Today we're continuing our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, entitled The Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 10, Srimad Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Today we're on text number 8. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text number 8. Please repeat. Yodyatmiko yam purusham. Yodyatmiko yam purusham. So sav eva hridayika. So sav eva hridayika. So sav eva hridayika. Yastacho vaya vichcheda. Yasta
Bhautika
Yogyatmiko yam purusha
Yogyatmiko yam purusha
So sav eva didaivika
So saveva didayvaka
Yastatro paya vichcheda Purusho yadi bhautika
Puruso hi adi bhautika
Please chant.
Yo adhyatmiko yam purushaha
Yogyatmiko yam purusha So saveva didayvaka
Yastatro vyavichchedaha
Yastatro maya vichera
Purusho hi adibhautika
Puruso hi adi bhautika
Yogyatmiko yam purushaha
Yogyatmiko yam purusha So saveva didayvaka
Yastatro bhaya vichcheda
Yastatro maya vichera
Purusho yadi bhautikaha
Puruso hi adi bhautika Yogyatmiko yam purusha
Yogyatmiko yam purusha
So saveva didayvaka Yastatro maya vichera
Yastatro maya vichcheda
Puruso hi adi bhautika
Purusho yadi bhautika
Yogyatmiko yam purusha So saveva didayvaka Yastatro maya vichera Puruso hi adi bhautika Yogyatmiko yam purusha So saveva didayvaka Yastatro maya vichera Purusho hi adi bhautika
Anybody else?
Yogyatmiko yam purusha
Yogyatmiko yam purusha
So saveva didayvaka
So saveva didayvaka
Yastatro bhaya vichcheda
Yastatro maya vichera
Purusho yadi bhautika
Puruso hi adi bhautika
Word for word synonyms, please repeat. Yah.
Yaha
One who.
One who
Adhyatmika.
Adhyatmika
Is possessed of the sense organs.
is possessed of the sense organs.
I am. This. Purusha.
Purusha
Personality.
personality.
Saha. He.
He
Aso.
Aso.
That.
that
Eva.
Eva.
Also.
Also
Adidayvikaha.
Adidayvaka
Controlling deity.
controlling deity.
Yah
That which.
That which
Tatra.
Tatra
There. Ubhaya.
Ubhaya
Of both. Vichcheda.
Vichcheda
Separation.
Separation
Purusha.
Purusha
Person
He.
He
For. Adibhautika.
Adibhautika
The visible body or the embodied living entity.
the visible body of the embodied living entity.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person. And the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidaivic. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhotic person. embodiment seen on the eyeballs means what we see. So we look at someone or we look in the mirror, that form that we see is called adiphotic person. Purport. It's a little bit longish. The supreme controlling summum bonum is the personality of Godhead in his plenary portion of Param Atma, or the Supersoul manifestation. I'd like to just make one point on this one sentence. That throughout Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller, the Supreme Controller. And we'll bring this out more perhaps, but when we talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead controlling this world and controlling the personalities within this world, this is not referring to Vraja Krishna, Krishna in Goloka. This is referring to the Paramatma manifestation, or the Super Soul manifestation within this world. I noticed the air conditioner's on and a window is open. Is that a contradiction?
What do you want to do?
And so it's actually Mahavishnu, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, who's controlling everything in this material world. So generally we say, oh, Krishna's the controller, and we'll get to that, that's true, but when we're talking about the material world, it's actually Super Soul in either the form of Mahavishnu, Karadakashayi Vishnu, Shirodakashayi Vishnu. This is the Super Soul manifestation. So Prabhupada continues, in the Bhagavad Gita 10:42 it is said, Atava bahunaitena kim yatena atavarjuna vishtabhyayam idam krishnam ekam shena stito jagat. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. So in other words, if somebody is a controller, they are, to one extent or another, a manifestation of the Paramatma feature of Krishna. Because the Paramatma feature of Krishna is the controller. Everybody else is like an instrumental controller in his hands. But still, apparently, there are divisions of the controller and the controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god, as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are. but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmika person, and the controller is called the Adhaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruited activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god, or even Brahma, or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. This is like a drama, and we're all playing parts in the drama. You know, we're going to do a drama, so hey, you want to all audition for the parts? We've got about 10 parts to fill, so why don't you all come and you can audition for the parts. And if you qualify, yeah, you would make a fantastic, Joker in this drama. You won, out of the 5 people that auditioned for that role, you got it. You did the best. You don't know who's qualified. Or out of all the people that auditioned to be the saintly sannyasi, you qualified. So similarly in this material world, every position from the micro to Lord Brahma is simply a role within this humongous drama. And we audition for those roles. How do we audition for those roles? We do karmic activities. And we get little credit points. Either white credit points or black credit points. And our credits accumulate. And then when the time of rebirth comes, the higher demigods check out our credit score. Oh, here's this person's credit score. They've won the role of some oppressed, person somewhere being, driven like a slave to work just to put a little bread on the table. Or this person's credit report says, wow, they get to be Lord Indra in the next Manvantara period. So, like that, we think we're the doer. I am a king, or I am a street sweeper, or whatever. But those are just roles that you play. And if you play your role nicely, then everybody applauds. You might get the Emmy Award, or is that Oscar? Which one's for? Emmy, I think, is for acting. Whatever, you get an award. You'll get, another role in another drama. So if we play our role properly, so how do you play your role? Well, the Vedic literatures give the dharmic rules by which you play that role. So if you happen to be in the position of being a parent, oh, I got the role of being a parent. Okay, well, what am I supposed to do? You can't just wing it, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. No, you have to follow the rules. So parents have to be responsible, they can't abandon their children, they can't be neglectful, they have to protect them, give them education and food and clothing and shelter and love of all sorts. But no, that's a hassle, I don't want to do that. I mean, begetting a child was all fun and everything, but raising them and being responsible? Well, if we don't play our role properly, then we get karmic, sinful reactions. But if we play our role properly, as it's described in the scripture, then we don't get karma. That work is not binding to this material world. often plays the role properly. So here, Prabhupada concluded this first paragraph by saying that every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. So we like to complain, oh, I'm so oppressed, you know. Everybody controls me. The government controls me. My parents control me. My boss controls me. You know, whatever. It's all we do is complain, complain, complain about how much we're controlled. We have no freedom. You know, maybe we live in a country where it's like severe dictatorship. You don't have any freedoms whatsoever. And we complain. But why are we in that position? You can't point your finger and say, oh, that person is so oppressive. That government leader is so oppressive. Those people over there are so... No, you're controlled because that was the credit score you had from your last birth. So you're stuck as a controlled instead of a controller. Again, Prabhupada's final paragraph. That which distinguishes the controller and the controlled, that is the material body, is called the Adibhautika Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas in the following hymn, Sabha Esha Purusha Nana Rasamaya. This body is called the Anarasa embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything, however, because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and the controlling planetary deities is in the Anarasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. And it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. And Srila Prabhupada's purport. So none of us like to be controlled. We can verify that every minute of the day. Somebody asks us to do something, why should I do that? I got my own schedule. You know, even though our superior or our boss or whatever, you know, we have an attitude problem. Some of us are control freaks. We want to control everything down to the minutest detail. We become micromanagers of our family or our office or the country or the world, you know, whatever it is. So we have this controlling ego. And that's our problem. Because as soon as we recognize or acknowledge or admit that I'm not the controller, I'm simply Prakriti. Prakriti means energy. Energy doesn't control anything. Energy is controlled by the energetic, by the Supreme Purusha. So, life in the material world is called the school of hard knocks. And what is the purpose of the school of hard knocks? The purpose of the school of hard knocks is to teach us, by getting into our thick skull, lifetime after lifetime, in different species of life, that you're not the controller. Now we might say, yeah, but I'm part and parcel of Krishna, so, you know, I've got the propensity to be a controller. Well, that's true, but we're meant to be a secondary controller, not a primary controller. So we might find it disheartening that I'm always in the position of being controlled. And you know, due to modern education, we don't accept that there's higher beings. Prabhupada in another place says, you want to lift your little finger. Go ahead. Okay, that was easy, right? I don't have to think about it. But what if there's paralysis? You can't lift your finger. You can't lift your arm. So what causes that paralysis? Of course, modern science will say, oh, there's some biophysical mechanism. The nerves are broken, and these chemicals aren't flowing, these tissues are disrupted, therefore you can't raise your arm. There's this thing called paralysis. In Ayurveda, they'll say the airs aren't flowing properly. You know, it says the airs aren't flowing properly, or there's a disruption of energy flow, so therefore you can't move your fingers and your arm. But the real reason why there's paralysis is due to the controlling demigods. The demigods, there's a demigod in control of every single sense and movement of our body. We can't breathe, we can't see, we can't lift our little finger without the corresponding controlling deity giving that opportunity or sanction. So recognizing that we are controlled is the first step, if you will, in becoming God conscious. Because what is God consciousness? It's simply accepting that Jivera Swarupahoy, Krishna and Nityadas, that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. You serve that person that you're controlled by. So unless and until we get that understanding embedded in our consciousness, we can't go anywhere in Krishna consciousness, despite all our erudite study and, you know, whatever. So, interestingly, Krishna himself manifests as a servitor. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, at the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the 5th chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies Lord Nityananda. That's what chapter 5 is all about, the glories of Nityananda. And in that chapter, he's making the point that Lord Nityananda is a appearance of Lord Balaram. Just as Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Balaram came as Nityananda Prabhu. So there, he's glorifying Balaram. Because he's trying to, Krishnadas Kaviraj is trying to convey the ontological position of Lord Nityananda. And in order to make the point, he emphasizes Lord Balaram's ontological position. So in that chapter, he describes how Lord Balaram, and therefore Lord Nityananda, are not technically the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, technically, they're the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. Lord Balaram, who was the original Sankarshan, manifests as Karanadakashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Shirodakashayi Vishnu, as Sheshanag. These are all forms of the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. His only business is to serve Krishna. So when it comes time to deal with the material creation, Lord Balaram as Sankarshan expands as the three Purusha avatars and as the Sheshanath upon whom Garbhodakashayi Vishnu Shadakashayi Vishnu rest, and upon whose hoods all the universes and planets are held up. So in that glorification of Lord Nityananda's position and his making the firm statement of Lord Nityananda and Lord Balaram's ontological position, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes one very nice verse in Adi Lila chapter 5, text 142. And he says, Ekale Ishvara Krishna, Ara Sabha Pritya, Yare Yache Nachaya, Se Taiche Kare Nritya. Ekale Ishvara Krishna. Ekale, alone. Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Meaning, Krishna alone is the Ishvara. Nobody else is Ishvara or controller. Ara Sabha Pritya. Pritya means servant. All others are servants, including Lord Nityananda, including Lord Balaram. But to speak of you, we can't stand that message. Excuse me, my dear Jivatma. Get off your high horse. You're floating around the material world like I'm something. Look at me. I can control this spouse, and I can control this family, and I can control this corporation or this country. You can't even control your senses. And guess what? You're nothing but a Britya, a servant. We can't stand that. Don't call me a servant. But guess what? Lord Balaram and Lord Nityananda are servants. Ekale Ishvara Krishna. Krishna is the only one who's not Britya. Arasava Britya. Everybody else is a servant. Yare Yache Nichai, Se Tache Kare Nritya. They all dance as he makes them do so. So who or what dances according to the direction of a controller? What do you call that? Somebody that's dancing. Not even by their own, like, I'm going to choose the dance step, I'm going to choose how I dance. No, you're not. You're not even that much in control. All right, you've admitted your position as a dancer, but you can't even dance according to the rhythm you want to dance or whatever. You have to dance as he makes you do so. So what is that called?
A puppet.
A puppet. I remember as a kid I had marionettes. Marionettes, the puppets on strings. You pull this string and the arm goes up, and you pull this string and the left leg goes up. That was like really awesome. I really liked those marionettes. So you're not even an independent puppet. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj then concludes his ontological presentation about Lord Chaitanya by saying, thus Lord Chaitanya is also the only controller, because Lord Chaitanya is not an avatar. He is avatari. Avatari means he from whom all avatars expand. So Lord Chaitanya is not an avatar. He's Krishna and nothing but Krishna. So he's avatari. So he's making this firm statement at the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita that we're not even going to go into Lord Chaitanya's life, his lila, etc., until you understand his ontological position. Lord Chaitanya is also the only controller. All others are his associates or servants. So when and if, hopefully before death comes, when we totally imbibe that consciousness that I'm nothing but a puppet in Krishna's hands, then we can actually be qualified to enter a rasa with Krishna. So I began by saying that Krishna is not the actual controller in this world, Vishnu is, with the Purusha avatars. Because Krishna is kind of busy. He doesn't have time to be a controller. He's busy 24/7, having loving, blissful, ecstatic, joyful, loving leelas in Gokula. He doesn't have time. I'm sorry. Goloka, Vrindavan. He doesn't have time to, oh, excuse me, I have to stop our play right now. I have to go attend to some business. Like we all have to, right? Oh, time to go to work. I gotta leave my family, go to work. Oh, my playmates, I have to leave you. My mother said it's time to go home and have dinner and go to bed. But that's not the situation with Krishna. Whether manifested in Boma Lila in Gokula Vrindavan here on earth, or in the original Vrindavan in Goloka, Krishna only plays 24/7. So in order to get the controlling work done, his expansion of Vishnu does all that. Vishnu is Krishna in work clothes. But Krishna is a controller. But how's that? He is only a controller within rasa. And that control is done by love. So we all can't stand being controlled. But we throw the baby out with the bathwater and we come to a wrong conclusion that I don't want to be controlled, I want to be the controller. Actually, that's the improper understanding. The proper understanding is I only want to be controlled by love. And that's actually, why does that please us? When I'm controlled by love, I feel happy. The big high court judge spending the whole day being the controller. But when the high court judge goes home at night, his little child jumps on his back. Daddy, get down on the ground. I want to play horsey. And that man is completely controlled by a 5-year-old child. So how is that? That makes him happy. When he's in the courthouse, if somebody tries to control him, they're in big trouble. Anger, contempt of court, something. But as soon as he walks in the front door of his house and the little child demands that he get on the ground and play horsey, the man is so happy. Why? Because he actually wants to be controlled, but only by love. So that's how Krishna is a controller. Krishna only controls in loving relationships. And he's controlled by Radharani and his devotees in loving relationships. A mutual competition of control and controller. So here in the material world, we're not in a rasa with Krishna. We're in a rebellion against Krishna, separation from Krishna. So Krishna doesn't have anything to do with us. He's not even getting involved in our life. Personally, Paramatma takes care of all that. But when a person actually turns to Krishna and becomes his real devotee, then Krishna starts taking personal charge of that person's even material life. Life in the material world, I should say, because the devotee's life is not material. We just finished yesterday reading the 87th chapter of the Krishna book, Bhakti in hand. We're reading Krishna book. And that's the chapter entitled Prayers by the Personified Vedas. It's the longest chapter by far in the Krishna book. It's a huge chapter, and it's all philosophy. There's no Leela. After going through this whole Krishna book of, such sweet Leela, then chapter 87 comes, and it's all philosophy. So the personified Vedas, Sanandana Kumar quotes the personified Vedas as they offer prayers to Mahavishnu. It's time to create the material world again. So long prayers. At the very end of the chapter, the last sentence, Prabhupada says, upon understanding the prayers offered by the personified Vedas, one should surrender to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The bottom line, punchline always is, therefore you should surrender to Krishna. And Prabhupada actually ended today's purport in a similar mood. The last sentence was, and thus the conclusion is, all you need to know is the conclusion. Sometimes there's like this really big math formula for calculating this and calculating that and proving this and proving that. And you're like, could you just get to the bottom line? Okay, the conclusion is x equals 2.34 to the third power. Okay, thank you. I don't care how you got there, just give me the conclusion. I don't want to go through all the mathematical proof. So Prabhupada ends today's purport, just as he ended the 87th chapter of the Krishna book, by saying the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all, which means one should surrender to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So this is the mood that we need to imbibe, that I want to be controlled by Krishna's love. I don't want to be a controller. Get that out of your consciousness. B, I don't want to just be controlled by material nature and super soul. I want to be controlled by Krishna in a loving rasa. So I just want to conclude by mentioning how Srila Prabhupada, even if he never stepped off the boat, Prabhupada's boat, the Jaladuta, arrived at the Commonwealth Pier in Boston on September 17, 1965. The very next day, September 18th, he wrote a most beautiful prayer called Markine Bhagavatam Dharma, Preaching Krishna Consciousness in America. If he had never stepped foot off of that boat and, did what he did for 12 years, if he had, God forbid, died of a heart attack on that boat before he even got off the boat, he still, nonetheless, offered us the most perfect prayer, that if we could just memorize this prayer and imbibe the mood of this prayer, we would each attain perfect Krishna consciousness. Even if he had done nothing else. He gave us everything by giving us Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Every devotee, especially any Sankirtan devotee, should know this. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to point out that he begins, the very beginning, he says, "My dear Lord Krishna, you're so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here." Have you ever been in that situation? Why has Krishna put me in this position? Why has Krishna put me in this place, or with these people, or with this service, or with this illness, or with this difficulty, or with this opulence? I don't know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. I'm not going to put up any resistance. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? And he ends by saying, "Oh Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you like." So this exactly resonates with Krishnadas Kaviraj's statement that we just read a few minutes ago. That Krishna is the only controller. Everyone else are his servants, and they dance as he makes them do so. So as disciples or followers within Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission, we need to imbibe this mood, and if we do so, all success is guaranteed. As exemplified in Srila Prabhupada's life. That's all he did was offer this prayer, and then all success. The dam of hindrances just broke, and the ocean of success just flowed forward as soon as Prabhupada offered that prayer. So we'll stop there, see if there's any discussion. Maya Ganesh.
Krishna came in 5,000 years ago, and the point of his message, his purpose in coming, was to tell us to surrender unto him. 1866. And you're stating that everyone that he's speaking to are servants, beginning with his brother, Balaram, who are all servants. So, in addition to servitude, Balaram is also the reservoir of knowledge. So can you say something about how that knowledge is distributed among the servitors? Because Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So understanding we're servants and how we surrender is provided with knowledge. How does that distribute itself?
So Lord Balaram is called the Adi Guru, and it is through the Guru Parampara by which transcendental knowledge is distributed. And that transcendental knowledge does not simply refer to some bandha jnana, like, information about where are you, where's the material world, where's Krishna, the position, the relative position between all these energies, etc., etc. But there's also the abhideya jnana, which is how do you, after being convinced of your position, we're telling you, you're the controlled, you're the servant. Now, abhideya jnana means how do you act in that capacity? What do you do to, live the life of a servant? And then the prayojana jnana means the knowledge of the ripened fruit of that life of servitude. So the Guru Parampara gives us all these aspects of jnana, sambandha jnana, abhideya jnana, prayojana jnana. And in the highest teachings, the individual disciples, whether it's in the heart or whether it's face-to-face instruction, somehow or other, the disciples get the highest knowledge. What is that knowledge? What is your exact, unique, specific identity in relation to Krishna? Because when we say you're a servant, it doesn't mean that you're in dasya rasa. Those who are in sakya rasa, vatsalya rasa, madhurya rasa, they're all servants, just with different flavors, how they serve. So, Lord Balaram is the Adi Guru, and through the Guru Guru Parampara. He's teaching by his example how to be a servant. And then through the Guru Parampara, the lessons are coming forth. And it's up to us to really, surrender to Shri Guru. Because through Shri Guru, it will be revealed to us. Our service to Shri Guru will cause that revelation to be blessed, we'll be blessed with that revelation. And ultimately, what is our specific identity and position in Krishna's abode? And that's the highest knowledge. Because, you get hired for a job. Okay, here's your job. But they don't give you any information about what you do. What's the job description? Okay, here I am. I'm sitting at my desk. What am I supposed to do? I have no knowledge about what I'm supposed to do. Tell me. So like that, we could plop you down in Goloka right now, but you'd just be standing there going, what should I do? So that's the highest knowledge, and it's only gotten through Tadvini Pranipatina Pariprashnina Sevaya Upate Chantite Jnana Jnaninas Tattva Darshina. That by submitting to the saintly devotee, rendering humble service, making relevant inquiries, then they will bless us because they've seen the truth. So they can bless us with that highest truth. Is that okay, or do you have anything else to add?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Lakshmi Shree Prabhu.
So you spoke nicely about control by love. Even to be controlled by love, it still takes an giving into it. So you don't so easily want to do it, but you want to do it because you want to please the person. But it's still an extra effort. So you have to still cut that knot. Because you have some attachment. You want to do something, but you have to go away from that.
We cannot be controlled by love unless we, in fact, are on the platform of love. If there's even one tinge of lust left in our heart, we balk at that control. We have some reservations, we've got motivation. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies the gopis in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That don't you dare look at them and think that they are like you, controlled by lust. I'm sorry?
Let me complete one point. So, let me complete this one.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So, controlled by love happens only when we unconditionally surrender to that love. So that is when that relationship can happen, that transaction can happen. And my experience of that is in the beginning days of Krishna consciousness, especially Bhakta. So he is so unwillingly likes to be controlled. You give him any service, you do it. You don't question it. Because you don't know fully about Krishna consciousness, and this is the best thing you can do to please Krishna, please his spiritual master. So you're so open to be controlled. So that's when we really get the highest happiness and bliss in Krishna consciousness. Then what happens over a period of time, and there is okay, I know this, I know a lot of things, and then you take the position of, you go away and further away and away from the position of being controlled by love, or rather you're in a different attitude. Attitude is not correct. So then we lose that against the Krishna.
Yeah, two reasons. Most of us start off as sentimental devotees. So on a sentimental platform, not on a realized platform, we're allowing ourselves to be controlled. But sentimental devotees make offenses. So as we make offenses, primarily offenses Nama-aparad, which includes Vaishnava-aparad, Guru-aparad, Shastra-aparad, due to inadvertent or advertent offenses, we lose our taste. We lose our mood of, even if it's a sentimental mood of surrender, and we start saying, why should I be surrendered? Why should I be controlled? And we lose that enthusiasm. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies the gopis because they want to please Krishna. And why do they want to please Krishna? just to please Krishna. They don't do it like, I want to please Krishna because if he's pleased with me, then I'm going to get a smile, or I'll get a piece of burfi from him, or he'll look at me favorably. No, they want to please Krishna just to please Krishna. But lo and behold, by pleasing Krishna with that mood, he bestows upon them a happiness that they didn't even ask for, that they weren't even looking for. That's a really high platform. So you can't actually be controlled by love unless you, in fact, yourself are on the platform of love. So there's a little tinge of kama, lust, still in our consciousness, then Krishna doesn't directly reciprocate with us. Paramatma does. So it's a really, really, really high platform. And we only can get there by serving those who are on that platform. Therefore, Prabhupada said, I don't know why you brought me here. Whew, this is a terrible place. How could you, what business could you possibly have for me here? But you know what? Like the 8th Shikshashtaka, you remain my worshipful Lord unconditionally. You can trample me if you want. Do with me whatever you want. So if you brought me here to dance, then go for it. Make me dance. I'll do it. Someday, hopefully, we'll come to that platform. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll stop there. Okay, Dr. John, one last thing.
Yeah, someone wants to tell me words mean something. So I like, when you said control, I was going to say something about surrendering, but you answered my question when you saved it for the end. Well, what is the best word to use so people don't feel intimidated? Is it control or surrender?
Yeah, I know. We don't like those words. Surrender, control, servant. Ooh, those are like 4-letter words.
Yeah.
They have very bad connotations, especially in our American culture. I don't know, it depends on your audience. But, you could say things like, we're accepted into a loving relationship, or, a reciprocal loving relationship. Instead of, I'm the servant of God, I'm an aspiring lover of God. But yeah, people have to get over those hang-ups,